Welcome back to another episode in the Ennea Health series. We are just about halfway through, or just over halfway through this series where we talk about practical health tips that can actually make a difference in your life. And today we're talking all about Enneagram Type 5 with a real life Enneagram 5. I know, it's a miracle that one came on the show and we have her here today.
This is the Made for Living Well podcast, hosted by Alexa Sherm, the place to create a life well lived.
Welcome back to this podcast. As always, my name's Alexa, and this is the place where I believe you were made for living well. And I love saying that because it's so against the norm, making you believe that you're just a body needing fixed. And it's such an easy mindset for Enneagram Type 5s to get into. To view health as just another hurdle that they have to overcome or work to store, hoard, and conserve. The scarcity mindset type of health rather than living in true abundance. Now, if you didn't go back and listen to the previous episode where we take a deep dive into Enneagram Type 5, you're going to want to do that before you listen to today's episode, which is an interview with an online friend and real-life Enneagram Type 5. I know I said it before, but it truly is a miracle that any Enneagram 5 stood up and decided to come on the show because I know that you are very private people. And while you have a ton of knowledge and insight and intellect to share, that you like to do that in smaller settings. And there's nothing wrong with that. But today on the show, I welcome Cassidy Tyler, who so willingly volunteered to come on the show and talk about what it's like to be an Enneagram Type 5. I also ask her questions like what she struggles with, what is she like, and what works well. We even dive into a new view of meal planning that might help all Enneagram Type 5s out there. It really is an insightful show, and I think that you're going to love it. Because at the end of the day, what I want health to be is something that you are. It's who you are, part of your identity, not just what you do or another chase or fight that you have to try to win. It's knowing yourself so deeply that you know how to provide what you need. It's really just knowing yourself. And the Enneagram can help you do that. Now, of course, there's only 9 types and 1 billion people in the world, so you're going to just use this as a foundation. But more than another big box approach, this shows you what drives you, what motivates you, and what encourages you. And today we're going to dive into all of that with Cassidy on the show. But before we get there, I just want to remind you that if you want all of the practical information, the health tips, the meal planning ideas, head on over to the show notes at thelivingwell.com and download the 10-plus page guide I put together just for you. Now, of course, it's always good to learn about everyone else that you're involved with in your life, whether it's a spouse, coworkers, a sister, a friend, or even your children. So make sure you download all the guides or the guides that pertain to the other people in your life so that you can all work together and not just work so far apart. I know this from real life, where my husband and I can butt heads so hard, but when we learn to understand each other and what makes us tick, we help to support each other, and it makes all of the difference. So again, find that at thelivingwell.com. And while you're there, make sure you check out a planner. I think it can really help you manage your time, manage your energy, your resources, things that are of so much value and importance to you, and help you plan your life in a way that you can get the most done in the least amount of time. The Nourish Planner is your tool to do that, and I show you how to use it based on your Enneagram type over at The Living Well. So make sure you check that out, and then stay tuned as we dive into the show today with Cassidy. Welcome to the show, Cassidy. Surprisingly, or not surprisingly, you are my only Enneagram Type 5 that reached out to be on the show. So I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Like I said earlier, it's not really a 5-ish thing of me to do, but the Enneagram is something I'm super interested in, and also as a 5, just super interested in self-awareness. So I'm glad you asked me.
Yeah. So I'm so excited to learn more about you and what you have to say, because I think Enneagram 5s are kind of one of the more mysterious Enneagram types of the Enneagram series. And yet so much, like when I did research about Enneagram Type 5, so much of what we do with health today is so against, or what I would perceive against how a Type 5 actually works. Like, do you agree with that? Like, being told what to do and programs, like that's not really an Enneagram Type 5 kind of thing?
Yes, yes. So I actually, that's so great that you say that, because that has been probably my biggest struggle with health is just, yeah, there's a lot of data and information in products and systems and programs that, the world sells to you and tells you is going to fix you, right? And as a 5, we kind of have this deep sense of longing and knowing like there's something about me that's not fixable. And so it doesn't really reconcile. So yeah, that's probably one of my biggest struggles with health as a 5.
Yeah. Yeah. It was something I had no idea before I started doing the research. Obviously I'm a little outside of who I am reaching for an Enneagram 5 here, but it was really fascinating. And so we're going to talk about it later and some of the tips that I gave to see if they resonate more with you. But before we go there, can you just give us a brief overview about the Enneagram Type 5 and what you love about it and what you struggle with?
So the Enneagram Type 5 is typically referred to as the observer or the investigator. I prefer the observer more just because investigator sounds kind of aggressive and the 5 is in a withdrawn stance. Also, I found that as a 5, no data seems irrelevant to me. So I will observe and, I want to see anything and everything. So I can find anything interesting. 5s are attracted to wisdom, knowledge, and learning. So we like having insight, learning the nature of things, seeing how everything works together, whether it's the kitchen sink or if it's, complex social systems. So we have a huge fix-it problem with the world, which can get pretty weighty, but it also provides a lot of purpose and meaning, I think, for us too.
Right.
And then what I love about being a 5, I think it makes me a good advisor, to be so observant and a good listener. As a 5, I hate to talk about my strengths.
Right.
It's not really something we like to do. But I think if there's one thing I could say, is what I love is it gives me an open-mindedness to really see the variables and factors that are helpful to give good advice, whether it's, in relationships or financially. We can kind of see the end result before it gets there. So that also means it's kind of a big responsibility to have people come to you with big problems. But I think it keeps us healthy. It keeps us wanting to be sharp for our relationships and wanting to help others where they are and in their needs.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. And I feel like I'm really pushing an Enneagram 5 to even be on this show. So I really applaud you for being here and sharing. But I like how you kind of kept referring to connection. And from what I was learning from the Enneagram Type 5, connection is one of the healthiest things, or one of the best ways to make an Enneagram 5 healthy, is this ability to connect with the world around. So correct me if I'm wrong, but by nature, you live more in a scarcity mindset. So maybe that's why you collect knowledge. Is that correct? Is that what you say?
Yes, absolutely. So I think our deepest issue with ourselves is thinking that we're not enough.
Yeah.
So we have a scarcity mindset, just kind of like in any facet of life, like relationally, physically, thinking there's not going to be enough. Like at the end of the day, I'm not going to have enough energy. I'm not going to have enough knowledge. I'm not going to have enough emotion to share with someone. So yeah, definitely always feeling like there's not enough of us to go around.
Yes, yeah. And what's fascinating about an Enneagram Type 5, while we all have energy that we lose in a day, Enneagram Type 5s are surprisingly fixated on the amount of energy and the fear of losing that energy more than any other type. And so when I did the health recommendations, I talked about energy banking, and basically meaning like doing more things to fill your energy tank and less things to steal it away from you, and trying to provide this idea that there is a life of abundance out there, like there is more abundance than scarcity. But one way we kind of mentioned this is the connection aspect of that. Is it difficult for a 5 to connect, say, with other people, or is it more fear-based? Or is it not difficult? Is it just an energy thing?
I have a hard time speaking for other people because I don't know. Everyone is very different, but
right.
Yes, personally, I think it is an energy thing. So I have found when I just, and maybe it's the 5 in me that's like, I'm going to be disciplined. I'm going to go to this social event, and I'm going to connect with people that I know that I will enjoy talking to once I start. But I think it's the thought of that going, like if I'm going to go to a social event, I need to know 2 days ahead of time so I can start banking my energy for that thing that I'm planning on going to. So I definitely think it's an energy thing and a mindset of this is valuable. This connection is valuable. And at the end of it, I will have more energy than I had before.
Yeah. Yeah. I told you before the show, my brother-in-law is an Enneagram Type 5, and I would have never guessed. I mean, he is so great with people, and I would have never guessed that the withdrawal was even there. Like I see him like wanting to go home at family functions, you know, just to be alone. Like I do see that aspect of him. But I never really correlated it. So when I say like connecting, it's not like you're withdrawing because you don't like to be around people. You really do crave that, but at the sense of securing your energy.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's more of wanting to be generous with, you know, whatever we feel like we have to offer in the relationship, and being afraid that we won't be able to in that circumstance. Yeah. The withdrawing is definitely not about not wanting to connect, but more about conserving energy.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole idea of energy and time, both of those things kept coming back up over and over about the, like the fear of losing both of those or conserving them or hoarding them. That was just like drawn over and over. And I feel like I'm just making that connection that Enneagram 5s are maybe more givers than most people, right? Like more naturally inclined to want to give, but you fear that you won't have what it takes to give, or what you perceive as what it takes to give.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So, just the more I learn about the Enneagram 5, we really value like knowledge and learning and knowing as much about, you know, anything and everything as possible. So I think, a fear in being generous is I don't know enough, you know, I don't have enough to give. So I might as well not give at all. And that's, you know, a very broad definition of generosity, like outside of monetary, you know, definition of generosity.
Right. It's like every Enneagram type, they're always insecure about what they're actually very gifted at. Like Type 5s tend to be the most intellectual of all the people in the world. And yet it brings up their deepest insecurity is not having enough knowledge. In fact, they generally have more than most people. Yeah, it's really, really fascinating. But as an Enneagram Type 5, you're in the head triad. So you're a thinker. Like you stay in your head. What do you do? Like what are some mechanisms that you do to get yourself out of your head? Like out of the... Someone would consider a thought spiral that you can easily get yourself into. How do you keep your thoughts in your head healthy, I guess is what I'm asking.
Sure. So this is a lifelong pursuit. I feel like for a 5, how do I get my thoughts healthy? But I think as a 5, naturally you tend towards minimalism. And I wouldn't say like it's extreme in my case. I'm sure it is for others, but just anything that's physically cluttery. Just you already have enough clutter in your mind. You have to get the physical clutter out. So I think just a simple activity, to be honest, is cleaning. I clean my house like every day, picking it up all the time. I feel that it helps me think better. And then also just find something physical, like to do, like whether it's like a crafty hobby or doing updates on your house, whatever it is, it's just something physical that can get your mind like onto something that creative, get your mind out of itself, working outwards instead of inwards.
Yeah. Yeah. That totally makes sense from the recommendations that I gave. Like I kind of said that you need to move before you get in your mind. And it's not to say that your mind is a bad place. Like that's one of your greatest gifts. But again, I feel like fives are very extreme. And you wouldn't maybe even know that about them because you tend to be a little bit more minimalist, a little bit under the radar. But when we look at fives in health, we see two extremes. We see almost like this intense gathering of information and wanting to do everything right, and food is good or bad, like very quantifying health. Some would consider this more of like the orthorexia route of this obsession with health. But then we see on the other extreme where fives can get so in their head and so in their thoughts that they often skip meals. And when they do remember that they're hungry, they'll just reach for convenience food. Like it's like health isn't even a thought that they have. It's just kind of like something that they need to do to sustain whatever it is that they're passionate about or whatever they are thinking about. And so we see two ends of the spectrums usually with five is like the extremes. Do you feel like that is there's truth to that in a five? Because it's hard to see that, like as someone who's not a five, that's hard for me to see kind of in a five.
Yeah. So I feel like we probably put off a very level-headed,
for sure,
easygoing persona. Yes. And that is maybe sometimes true. I would not say that it's not true, but the extreme happens definitely internally. So I would very much identify with the extremes in health. I did struggle with a period of restrictive eating and being very obsessive about how I viewed health and food. But then, yes, like I think the inclination then is to swing the other way. And so when I'm trying, to recover from restrictive eating, when I was trying to recover, it's like, well, how much should I care about this? Should I care about it at all? And you can swing way the other way. And I think it all comes back to, I don't know enough to fix the problem. So I can pretend like it doesn't exist. Like I can pretend like health doesn't exist and how I treat my body or what I put in my body is irrelevant. And that's kind of like an escape mechanism for that extreme one way or the other.
Yeah. Yes. So you notice the extremes too, because like I said, it's as someone who's not that, fives do come across as extremely level-headed, down to earth,
yes,
pretty basic people. But when I was doing the research, I'm like, oh, you can totally see how just being so in your head, you could go in either direction. So when we do look at creating health, right, like making this just something that a five does, or like who they are, not necessarily just a series of what they do, there's difficulty in coming to this middle ground. How have you found a middle ground in this?
Sure. Yeah. So I think it comes back to a lot of the idea of wholeness. I would say that I feel most balanced when I am understanding how a certain action, a certain food, a certain exercise is affecting not only my body, but my mind and my soul, so to speak, or my relationship building component. So, sorry, could you repeat the question exactly?
Like, how have you found the balance in the extremes?
Oh, okay, right. Right, yeah. So I would say, finding the purpose. So my purpose in life is not to be healthy, right? Health is a part of my life, but it's not my purpose in life. And my purpose in life is not to look a certain way or to perform in any, or meet an expectation. So I think coming back to my purpose in life, which I'm a believer in Christ. So that's, make disciples and to know God above all else. So when I come back to that purpose, it's much easier to balance my health. It's something for me to enjoy. The health I do have is a gift, and the health I don't have is something that will be given to me, in good time.
Because it's really important for a 5 to find a purpose.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
I mean, it's important for all of us, but I especially feel like having a purpose outside of health is important. But then if people are on the other extreme, I feel like there has to be a level of making sure that they're aware that their health is also vital to them living their purpose, right? Like it's all about this vessel, like taking care of the vessel in which you do greater things.
Right.
So like how you said, like the wholeness and knowing your purpose, like I think that is a huge aspect and a key of kind of grounding yourself more in this middle space. I'm just thinking about this because it is like a a very thinker thing to figure out, right? Like, how do you think about it, but not obsess about it or not overthink about it?
I think, like I mentioned earlier, you as a 5, just overthinking is just your life. Like that's just what you do. And so, and that's not necessarily something that you can or should change about yourself, but just, finding the ways to balance that out. And so when I'm overthinking or I'm stuck and I'm in a loop in my thoughts, like just, thinking the same thing over and over again, and it's not productive, I go for a run. So, and that's, to be honest, the best way I found to clear my mind, from the clutter, besides cleaning, obviously. But, going for a run. I used to joke with my professors, in college that if I couldn't, write my papers, I just go for a 5-mile run, and at the end of it, my paper would be written. But it really is like, our bodies are created to feel those, endorphin highs and those hormone fluctuations in a way that, helps us be productive or helps us get past those, those periods of unhelp or dysfunction, just within our own bodies.
Yeah. That's so cool. And I think you're so right on those tips of just kind of allowing space throughout every day to get out of your mind. Because I think it's in the clutter and the overwhelm that it becomes scattered, right? Like everything starts to get jumbled and overwhelmed, and you start to withdraw and maybe pull away. And that's really where we see this unhealth come out of a 5, and pulling away from everything that they really are gifted and skilled at and passionate about. But at the same time, when it comes back to balance and like talking about what a 5 does really well, I think it's fascinating to say that when a 5 gets on board with something, you can run with it and detach emotionally, like in a healthy way, that makes this just you, like you don't carry a lot of, you don't attach a lot of emotions to things. And so you can just do things without having the guilt or the shame attached, or also without feeling like it's taking over your life, right? Like, so if you were to make healthy changes and you like created those rhythms based around that, like there wouldn't be the emotional hold that maybe like an Enneagram 2 or 3 or 4 would have with like, say, food, for instance, right? Just eating because you're sad. Like that doesn't tend to be as common with an Enneagram 5. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but once you get your mind in something and it becomes a habitual rhythm, it really is amazing at what an Enneagram 5 can commit to and be disciplined. Like you have some of the most willpower of any other Enneagram types, and it's just so natural for a 5.
Yeah. And I think that's, and not to bring it up too much, but that's what was kind of scary for me about my period of restrictive eating is like, wow, I'm actually really good at this.
Yeah.
But yes, I've seen it play out in good ways too. Just since, recovery and listening to your podcast, honestly, in the beginning, you talked a lot about hormone health and just like a lot of those habits. I was like, yes, like this is, I'm committed to this. I believe in this, but I think the hurdle for us is to get to that point is like, I really do believe in this. I really believe this is helpful and beneficial. But yes, definitely, like once we see the benefit and once we see the way it works into the wholeness of our body, the wholeness of our mind, it's very easy to commit and never turn back. Like, yes, this is what I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is pretty incredible. Just the discipline and just so many gifts and skills and strengths that an Enneagram 5 has. What are some other ones that you say that you use or could use to leverage in living like a healthy, balanced life?
Sure. So I feel like I love to think and reflect on, causes and effects of just health decisions made, foods eaten, or even conversations had, relationships. So I feel like our ability to reflect and then implement, changes after reflecting is a huge asset to our health. So just thinking of like, I eat pretzels a lot more than I need to because I do. I wait until I'm like super hungry and then I don't have anything to eat. I haven't planned for it. But what do I feel like after I eat pretzels? I feel full, but I don't feel energized, right? So knowing that, it fuels us to make the better decision next time. And that's a very small example, but I would say like even relationally, like how we feel after a certain conversation with our spouse or with, a parent or a sibling. We very easily detach emotions from decisions. However, I would not say that we do not feel emotions very deeply, I think, to our core. And so reflecting on those emotions that have stemmed from conversations and then, how can use that to, better the relationship is something I think is a huge asset of a 5. Like being able to feel those emotions super deeply, but also not react emotionally, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. I want you to clarify something. So
Sure.
5s think, right? They base decisions based on what they think, not how they feel. But technically a 5 is also very sensitive. So where is the emotional component in this? Like, how does the emotional component work for a 5?
That is still something I'm trying to figure out. When I first, got into the Enneagram, I thought I was a 5 wing 6. However, upon further reflection, as a 5,